John Adams seems to have given us a list of things that can be, some of them might sound like even good traits, but he warns about them being something that could break through the bonds of the Constitution, like a whale breaks through a net, right? So he says we have no Constitution capable of governing men with passions unbridled. It's only sufficient for moral and religious people. I'm paraphrasing. And he says that avarice, ambition, revenge, and gallantry would break the bands of the Constitution like a whale breaks through a net, right? That's interesting to me. Now I'm thinking about that. This is a fresh thought this morning after listening to one of Dallin H. Oaks' many talks on religious freedom. He's given a number of really good ones, by the way. He'll always make the disclaimer that he's not speaking for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, setting our doctrine or our policy, but still the information is very useful to me. So I recommend looking up any one of his talks on the subject. He's usually a guest lecturer at a university or something. Anyhow, so avarice, that's a word I don't go around using in my daily life. That was the weird one. I guess that's somebody who, that's a characteristic of not just wanting to accumulate wealth, but really, really wanting to accumulate wealth, almost like a hoarding quality, or a really, gosh, I really want to get rich. Not just kind of rich, but really, really, really rich, right? Something to that effect, I guess. I don't know, you guys tell me if I'm getting it wrong. Ambition, that's a known one to all of us. Ambition can be about wealth, but it can be about so many other things, reputation and ambition for this, ambition for that. I think as a guitarist, in my younger years, I set the ambition to be able to play those, 15 note per second scales pretty easily. And, I've passed that up at times and stuff, depending on how in shape I am with my guitar playing, the shreddery stuff, whatever, I guess. But I think that's a trait that I can see that getting out of control in a government official. And I think these are traits that he's referring to regarding the government officials in particular. Because the Constitution, really to a certain degree, should govern the government officials first. It should govern the legislative, executive, judicial, the states, the officers of government, and then the people, last but not least. There's really a lot more emphasis on the rights of the people than there is on the rights of the government to govern the people. The right to govern generally doesn't exist. Let's just put it that way. God established government to serve the rights of man, not man to serve the rights of the government. Okay? So we should never flip that around. So ambition, and then revenge, that's an obvious one. So some concerning ones, Andrew Jackson and the election of, 1828, maybe 24, something like that, with John Quincy Adams, where he actually had more electoral votes, but nobody had enough to out and out win it. So that technicality, Quincy Adams got called to be the winner, and that made him an angry person and kind of scary. And I think his wife died or something. So, but the anger could come from the way he was treated by the Insiders Club. Doesn't matter. He comes out with revenge. I think that's a part of what operated within him. The ambition, I think Van Buren was somehow behind that tariff of abominations. There was some political ambitions hoping to, kind of create some psychology and make their political party look more popular and the other party look more extreme. And it kind of backfired. The law passed anyhow, which was a tariff of abominations. When you look at it, the whole story makes a tariff of abominations. According to Article 6, Clause 3, I agree with Thomas Jefferson and therefore with John C. Calhoun that the only rightful remedy for such action from the central government is nullification on the part of the states, right? Honestly, that's what when you read the plain text of the Constitution, it leads to no other conclusion. That's why you have Article 6, Clause 3. It has to be pursuant to the Constitution. The purposes, the powers enumerated, the procedures, etc., etc. Okay, promises guaranteed. All right, and then, so avarice, ambition, revenge, and then gallantry was the other one. So this is, like I said, this is a fresh thought for me. But I found that gallantry one to be really interesting. So that could be like a nobleness. They did have another meaning for it back then, but we're talking about government officers, and the other meaning was kind of more of like I don't know, a playa or something like that. I don't know what you would call it nowadays. I don't care. I think it's an irrelevant possible consideration when discussing faithfulness to the Constitution. That's the job of government officials and of the citizens, last but not least. Okay, and so when I think of gallantry, I think of, you think you're so dang noble, that your cause is so dang good, your explanation is so dang good, that who cares if the Constitution doesn't allow for it anyhow? People need to let you just do it. You just need to do it anyhow. You'd rather ask forgiveness than ask permission, as they say, right? I think where the Constitution has certain promises guaranteed, I think that's what the Constitution lays out. That's what the take care clause is. But when it comes to something like a law was passed that clearly violates the purposes of the Constitution, and you're going to come up with an explanation for why everyone has to obey it anyhow, as opposed to honoring their Article 6, Clause 3 oath, you might think you're some noble hero. This is no good if it's not like this or if it's not like that. I don't care. Did it get written into the Constitution that way or not? This is avarice, ambition, revenge, and gallantry would break the bands of the Constitution like a whale breaks through a net. And J. Reuben Clark says that basically we can't receive the blessings of heaven. We will lose our liberties if we ever amend the Constitution through any other means than the prescribed method, which is Article 5. So if you come up with a good explanation for why something else needs to be in the Constitution that isn't there, and you do it rather than waiting for the Constitution to get amended, doesn't matter how gallant, how noble your cause is, there is something wrong with that. And I think that's what Adams was getting at. So avarice, ambition, revenge, and gallantry. Our Constitution was only made as sufficient for a moral and a religious people. It is wholly inadequate to governing anyone else. And I think that really the Constitution is supposed to govern the government first, right? Again, I completely disagree with the idea of Kathleen Hochul. What about my right to govern? No, you don't have a right to govern. Nobody has, or that, what's like Kim Davis or whatever. My First Amendment rights to deny these people a gay marriage license. Look, you don't have First Amendment rights when you're a government official. You cannot impose your First Amendment rights on the rest of the country just because you're a government official. Either you can point to why what you're being told to do violates your oath to the Constitution, or don't impose your ideas. You have no right to impose your ideas, your explanations on anyone else. Avarice, ambition, revenge, and gallantry. What an interesting list. So interesting. So that's John Adams. By the way, John Adams, he's our original. People think of James Madison as the father of the Constitution. That's great, but honestly, John Adams, he had a lot of influence on that kind of stuff before James Madison. These ideas, a lot of them really come back to John Adams. Look into it. So, hey, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you later.